Hello and welcome to the DSTV football pregame show. I'm Evan Rossman, joined by my co-host Graham Baer. And this week, the Dukes head to InfoCision Stadium, where they'll face their second FBS opponent of the year, the Akron Zips. This is Duquesne's 13th FBS matchup all time, their only other win coming against Ohio. I think Graham was going to talk about how they've got a good shot this week for the Dukes.
Let's talk about some general Duquesne stats at the moment. So right now they're ranked second, despite only having a 1-2 overall record. They're still ranked second in their overall league, just under the CCSU Blue Devils. For the game itself, Akron currently has a favorable win percentage. They have an 84% chance ranked against the winning at this moment, just kind of based off current stats and player ability, coaching ability, just general kind of game analyzation at this moment. Akron is currently on top by a pretty significant margin. Duquesne overall, but compared to playing nationally ranked opponents, they're only 2-10. So they've clearly struggled against. They're kind of a little Penn State situation, where they kind of have a little bit of difficulty against some of those stronger, more adaptable, comprehensive teams. Mm-hmm. Not to say that Duquesne is necessarily bad team by any means.
Most
right?
Definitely, yeah.
They have a lot of skill. Head coach Jerry Schmidt is he's been in the coaching business for a long time. He knows what he's doing. Right, and a lot of the players have a lot of skills, which we will definitely go over later. But they're just having a little bit of a struggle at this moment. So if you want to go over Akron,
I'd love to get into Akron. It's been a rough start to the season for the Zips. Their first 3 games, 0-3, not how you want to start the year. First game they got shut out at home by Wyoming, and then their second game, a rout on the road against Nebraska. They lost 68-0. They gave up 726 yards. It's the most by an FBS school this year. As for their offense, they're averaging, just under 10 points a game, third worst in the FBS. And a lot of those struggles have been on their quarterback, Ben Finley, who's off to a bit of a rough start. His first 2 games, throwing for 96 yards per game, not really where you want to be. Didn't throw a touchdown, didn't even score in those first 2 games, so a bit of a rough start for Akron. However, last week against UAB, looked a lot more comfortable, a lot better. Only a 3-point loss. They got off to a quick start. They had the lead after the first quarter. And Finley was a lot better. Finley threw for 2 touchdowns. He had over 200 yards for the first time this season. So a bit of a new look Akron team that the Dukes will have to deal with this Saturday. Yep.
Yeah. For sure. And then, kind of bouncing back to Duquesne itself, Duquesne football. Mm-hmm. We are looking, this will be the 4th game of the season for the Duquesne Dukes. Obviously, we had the opener against Pitt, which was the historically significant game that, Duquesne would always play Pitt. But this is the first time that game was done since, I believe, 1969.
Long time.
So a significant amount of time since that's been done. I think it's the biggest crowd for a Duquesne versus Pitt game in history.
Yeah. It's a little different than Rooney.
A little different than Rooney, for sure. A little bit of a more intense environment.
More nerves, I'm sure.
And, even for that game, we saw a lot of good things out of the Duquesne Dukes. Joey Isabella,
great game,
quarterback.
He's been on fire.
Wide receiver. He has historically been, standing very well within, the team itself and just in, Duquesne football as a whole. Mm-hmm. Looking back at this previous week's game, he had a career-high receiving yards, 153 yards. Pretty solid.
Yeah,
Pretty decent,
real good.
Right?
Yeah.
And just kind of bouncing back to some other games, Duquesne won against Lincoln.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was particularly surprised
D2 school.
by that.
You'll take a tune-up game.
Sure. It's important for those teams to have those kind of games. You can get guys with a little less experience in, kind of hone their skills, train them up, see what they can do against maybe someone of maybe not equal stature, but a little less. It's important to build those skills. That way, when we go into those larger games against those more competitive opponents.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to touch on that game last week against Lehigh. That's the teams that the Dukes are going to face for the majority of the season are high-level FCS opponents who don't necessarily compete with like the Pitts of the world. They're like even the Akrons of the world, being a bit of a low-level FBS
game,
school,
right?
most definitely. So, but the Dukes, they look solid last week. Bit of a turnover problem. I think that's kind of what did it for them. I think one of the big keys to this game against Akron is winning the turnover battle. Last week they had a fumble at the end of the game, and then an interception just before halftime. And I feel like
Right.
those turnovers really just kind of shift the whole momentum of
Yeah.
the game and kind of change the way that your offense plays. You know, you kind of start to get a little more conservative. You don't want to turn that ball over. So I think against Lehigh, they kind of got a chance to, feel that out and, try and take care of the ball this week against Akron. That's one of the keys to this game for me.
For sure, right. And just kind of touching on those types of games, at that sort of similar skill level to what Duquesne is.
Yeah.
Those games, they come down to little mistakes,
Most
right? I mean,
definitely.
obviously, we're, even, when you're comparing, Ohio State versus Penn State or games like
Yeah.
that, we're talking about good players around the board,
yeah.
right? It is not just, it's not about the money. It's not about the stadium level. It comes down to small mistakes that
Right.
will make or break teams. And I think
Right.
with what Duquesne has to do is to kind of focus that centralized mindset of not making small mistakes,
Yeah.
not giving those silly turnovers,
Right,
right?
exactly, yeah.
Not throwing interceptions.
Right.
Just honing those skills into what they need to do
Most
to
definitely.
get it done, right? Tyler Riddle is I believe, the starting quarterback for the Dukes. He went 17 and 28, which, relatively decent
Yeah.
throwing schedule. And he 2 touchdowns,
Yeah.
right? I think one of those was a pass in. I'm not sure about the other one, whether that was a handoff.
I think
or
he had 2 passing
what
touchdowns.
two passing touchdowns?
Yep.
Okay. Right. And, clearly knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
He's been coached very well. I've seen him play
Yeah.
in games, right? He has good arm,
Yeah.
kind of a dual threat guy. If he needs to scramble and get away, right?
Right.
Or if there's some kind of breakaway or something, he's able to do it. I just think, what Duquesne has to do to kind of hone him and get some kind of chemistry
Yeah.
between his wide receivers,
Yeah, and
I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, and I'd love to touch on him a little bit. He's looked great to start the year. 604 yards, 8 touchdowns, good for 6th in the FCS. Only 1 interception, so kind of what we were talking about with taking care of the ball. He's actually done a really good job so far, and I'll look to continue that against Akron. And also great passing efficiency, right? He's 8th in the FCS in passing efficiency, so, he's not had to make a lot of throws so far, especially in that win
Sure.
over Lincoln. There wasn't a lot of, throwing to do, but he's been efficient. He's completed most of his passes, 64%. It's a good mark to be at. And that chemistry with Joey Isabella has been really apparent
Of
so far to
course.
start the year, if you want to talk about him a little bit.
Joey Isabella, right? He is, at this moment, probably one of, if not Duquesne's most standout players,
Most
right?
definitely, yeah.
He's got speed. He's got a little bit of power when he needs it, right? You need to run through somebody or you need to, do some fancy footwork, right? If you're running, slant routes or anything like that, he is your guy at this moment, right? I believe, I think I mentioned this before, career high receiving yards, 153 yards. That was the last game against the Lehigh.
Yep.
So, and, kind of touching on, again, I know I, sound like a broken record at this point. I think Duquesne has what it takes to beat Akron coming up, right?
I agree.
Obviously, they are the underdogs in this situation. I don't think anybody is denying that at this moment, right?
Yeah.
There are some things that I assume they have been working on, right? I passed by them practicing and that sort of thing. They are out there working hard, right?
Most definitely.
I think what they need to do to beat Akron is not only hone the skills of these star players, looking at the Logan Cushers or the Tyler Riddles or the Joey Isabellas, right? Just get those guys who might not be, star players, but they're still key players,
Most
right? The
definitely.
tight ends, the linemen especially, without linemen, QBs can't do too much, right? They're
true,
getting
yeah,
swarmed.
yeah.
We saw that at the Pitt game, right?
Yeah, no time.
Guys were getting past the offensive linemen, guys playing offensive tackle, offensive guard, right? And, swarming the QB. And, QB's only got so much he can do in that
true.
situation,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Either he can try and toss it, possibly get a grounding call, right, which nobody wants, right?
No,
And
don't
that,
go
or,
backwards.
you just got to take the hit and hope you don't get injured with that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately comes down to the coaching staff and, how these guys are working on their chemistry together.
Yeah.
If you have anything to add.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of the game to figure it out. This is a big game for Duquesne. It's a lower level FBS school. I feel like it's, a school that we think we have a good chance against.
Sure.
And it's not a great defense. They're not playing against a good defense. Akron, bottom of the pack in terms of,
Akron's skill lies in their offense.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think that's very clear.
Yeah, they've given up over 38 points a game, including massacre against Nebraska where they give up 68. So
Certainly.
I mean, I think if Duquesne's offense kind of gets out to a hot start, they could have a really good chance in this game.
For
and
sure.
I'd like to talk about Akron's offense a little bit. You mentioned that they've got a really strong offense. I'd like to bring up freshman running back Sean Patrick, the best game of his young career so far.
Right.
Last week against UAB, he rushed for 81 yards on 19 attempts, scored a touchdown. And even in the first 3 games where, the Akron offense couldn't really do much, shut out in their first 2 games.
Of course.
He's been averaging 5 yards per carry, so a bit of a bright spot in a bad offense. Last week, though, they did get back on track. They were able to put up 28 at UAB. So, we could see a bit of a different Akron team than the first 2 weeks. Right. And a lot of that is thanks to quarterback Ben Finley, who I mentioned. He's very experienced in college football. This is his 5th year. He spent 2 seasons at NC State, and he spent a season at Cal. Like, he, has Power 4 experience as a good quarterback.
He has had that higher level, more competitive experience, which definitely is an asset to them.
Yeah.
He knows how to play the game.
Yeah, most definitely, yeah. And he showed it last season, 2,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, so just 9 interceptions. So, he's shown that he can, carry an offense a little bit. And, they'll look to get back on track against us. So hopefully we can stop them, shut them down.
Yeah, I think the key takeaways here, right, just, again, circling back to that Pitt game, because that Pitt game, it's the initial opener. Yeah. It's the biggest crowd. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the biggest crowd they've ever had, but
I'd imagine.
I would imagine, right? It's definitely a little bigger than Rooney Field, without a doubt. Yeah. But, circling back on that Pitt game, whether people want to admit it or not, that first half of the Pitt game was not a slaughter.
No, it was not.
Right.
Yeah,
remind me what the score was, if you remember. Was
the final score? Was
no, like at halftime. It was like what, 24-9?
It wasn't 61.
24-6.
It wasn't 61.
It was not 61-9. So, we know that for sure, right?
Most definitely.
I think Duquesne, believe it or not, has it in him.
There
is something there.
It is
not a slaughter.
I think so too. And if you're gonna beat an FBS team, it's got to be the bottom of the barrel. So Akron is definitely down there. So I think if you're gonna beat an FBS school, get their second FBS win all time, it would come against Akron. Their first one came actually a few years ago, 2021 at Ohio. So another MAC team.
Right. And Ohio's.
And they're decent. Yeah, they're decent.
They have been in the news recently.
Yeah,
right?
Parker Navarro, great quarterback. Yeah, they're a good team.
For sure.
But I think if Duquesne's going to beat an FBS school, it's definitely not going to be Power 4 team like Pitt, but it will be a team like Akron. So I'm interested to see how the offense looks,
how they kind of develop with that point, right?
Most definitely.
And just add in some more talk about some of those younger guys who've also been getting in. Logan Kusher. Right, he did play a little bit against Lehigh.
Yeah,
right. He's not the starting QB, as we know. I believe that honor belongs to Tyler Riddle.
Yep.
But he scored his first career touchdown.
Yeah.
He's already showing a relatively decent amount of promise at that young age. Right?
Most definitely.
And whether he does decide to stay with Duquesne at the future, or there is always the transfer portal for these guys.
Right.
I think he will definitely be an asset to anyone who does decide to hone his skills. Mm-hmm. Even though I imagine Duquesne probably will put a focus on honing him once Tyler Riddle eventually does move on to other things.
Most definitely, yeah. And I'd like to talk about Duquesne's offense as a whole too.
Sure.
One of their strengths this season has been fourth down conversions. They went 2 for 2 last week against Lehigh on fourth down. 4 for 4 to start the season as a whole. Last season, converted 90% of their fourth downs. 18 for 20. So, this is a team that's used to pressure. If Akron, kind of pins them back, you've got a, 4th and 1 at midfield. I trust the Dukes to get it.
I trust them. I've seen, the turbo drills, right? I think everybody here kind of knows what turbo drill is, right? Maybe not 4th down scenarios, but, last quarter scenarios where you got like a minute left.
Yeah.
Second down, no timeouts, and you got to just do something. You got to get something done, right?
Yeah.
You got to you got to, throw some passes. Drops them, that's fine. Clock stops.
Right.
If you get the pass, you got to run it out of bounds. If you don't run it out of bounds, you got to keep your feet moving, right?
Most definitely.
That's just how it works. That's how the ball game works at this moment.
Yeah.
You cannot take too much time to try and decide something and think of something. You got to just go with the flow.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think we're well equipped to do that. I think the Lehigh game. It got to a point where, it was touchdown, back and forth. And, we were able to kind of keep up. It's just that,
slipped away.
When you start down, you kind of lose the turnover battle a little bit.
Right.
That's when it starts to get away. So I think, as you mentioned, it's the little things. It's the little mistakes.
It's the little mistakes that will shoot you in the foot.
Definitely.
Basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And that will hinder the ability for teams to win.
Definitely.
Now, if Duquesne can come up with something
Yeah.
and focus on something,
Yeah.
right? And kind of hone, like I've been saying, hone the skills as a team,
Yeah.
right? You can have one star guy,
Right.
but if, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link,
That's true,
right?
yeah.
If that weakest link if that weakest link breaks,
Yeah.
you got nothing.
It's
right?
true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's generally kind of what we have in mind. I wish the best for Duquesne.
Yeah. You want to give a
and,
little? You want to give a little prediction?
little prediction? Like score prediction.
Yeah, give me a
oh,
score,
boy.
give me a score.
Okay. I'm feeling I think Duquesne 21. I'm going to go with Akron 17.
I like that.
Akron
Close
17,
win.
Duquesne 21.
Close.
It's going
That
to be a
would
close
be-
win,
yeah.
but it's going to be a hard-fought
Yeah,
battle.
I would love to see Duke's second FBS win ever as a program.
For
That'd be
sure.
amazing. I think, I do think, as I said, this is the game to do it. So my score prediction, I'd say a little more high scoring. I'll go
Okay.
Duquesne 34, Akron 28.
34 Akron 28. Okay, a little shootout game,
Little
a lot
shootout
of
in
power.
Akron.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
want to
like
see some
it.
points. I want to see
I
some
like
points.
it. All right. Well,
But-
I think that will be all for us for this moment.
Yeah.
We hope to see y'all at the game tomorrow if you're going to it. And we'll see y'all.